from water systems, airports, and hospital environments. How do we make sure we are prepared for malicious threats in these critical environments? My name is Karin Muller from Onto-It, and welcome to Threat Talks. Let's get on to it.
Welcome to Threat Talks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity.
Last year, we explored vulnerabilities around Hecht the boat. This year, we're taking it even a step further with Hecht Hospital, Hecht the port, and even Hecht the airport. Today, we offer you Threat Talks from Tech in Columbia, Maryland. I'm here together with TC Hoot, Vice President Contracts at Tech, and of course, Luca Cipriano, our own threat intelligence specialist.
Hey.
Welcome. So, as usual, there's also a treasure hunt in this Threat Talk, so be aware and make sure you find it. Okay, TC, welcome. Could you tell us what TAC is?
Sure. So TAC is the Technology Advancement Center. We are a 501c4 nonprofit based out of Columbia, Maryland. We were established originally with a partnership from United States Cyber Command, and now we have grown that into where we're supporting different DoD entities right now, the Air Force, Special Operations Command, and the Navy. Basically, we're a cyber collaboration venue where we focus on not just IT, but OT. We are growing out our critical infrastructure labs and our critical infrastructure workspaces. You had mentioned the airport. That's our latest addition to us. So we have the city, we have a port, we have the railroads, we have the airports, and our goal is to use this infrastructure and primarily take the military teams that go out and do our Hunt Forward mission on behalf of other countries and train them on OT and the real systems that they will run into in those countries.
Okay.
So the airport, while I've been here, so thanks for having us, first of all.
Oh, you're welcome.
And while I was here, I looked at the airport, at the city. That's amazing. Really, like it's like a huge playground, especially for people that love IT, OT, this kind of things. But I really love that you're doing a great job, guys. Really, that's amazing.
I've got some really smart people that work for me, and for the TAC and they put in a lot of time and energy to try to make it as realistic as we can. And that's one thing that we say all the time. And you guys have seen it since you've been here is we try to use the real world technology. And I'm amazed that I talk to military units and I ask them, have you ever trained on real technology? And they're like, no, it's all computer and PowerPoints and all this. So we're trying to create that environment that they're going to incorporate or encounter when they go into the field to help these other countries.
Yeah, it really gives a different kind of impact when you see things. And we have been working with Hecht the boat, but also now that we've done all the different scenarios, it's in when you really can see what can happen and what can go wrong. It's different for the people that are looking, but also for who's trying to hack into it. And when you succeed, or there's really different impact.
Right. And I love the fact that when we're doing that, say the lighting system for the city, and one of the kids is actually able to go in and he's able to hack it, and then all the lights go out and you can see the look in their face. They're like, wow, I just did that. Yeah, you did.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, but Luca, first of all, let's step back. Can you explain to me what OT is?
OT, different from IT. So IT is information technology. So it's more about the data, the metadata that you have. So sharing data, while OT is operation technology. So it's more about commands that you send to, for example, we have seen Hecht the boat. We have like the ballast system that can be activated and deactivated. That are the signal that you use a PLC. The PLC to just activate and deactivate the pumps. So it's more like an on-off signal that you have. So the difference is that OT was designed when Well, now internet is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. We have Internet of Things, so everything gets connected. But back in the days, when OT was designed, it was more about operational. So they never really thought about security behind it when they designed the protocols. There's no, for example, encryption. They don't use like verification of the signal. So if I'm in the network, I can send signal around, and I'm trusted to that I'm the actual host that should send that signal. But also they have like sometimes hard-coded credentials, all these sort of things, because they were well, there's always, you need to think about security versus availability, and availability was more important at the time. But now we're seeing that also security is extremely important.
That's the one thing that I've noticed since I've been here or learned. And again, I'm not a tech guy, but when I'm working with all of the folks that work here at the TAC, learning that we interact, every human being in an industrialized nation interacts with OT every day. From the time you turn on the lights in your house, turn on your water, they were used in the plant that built your car. Everywhere you go, the street lights, the street signs, everywhere that you go, you're interacting with OT. And that was something I didn't know until I started working here. So
yeah, that was funny that you mentioned the cars, because I think last year there was a vulnerability in one of the wrenches that are used in cars.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a Philip electronic wrench that is controlled, it's controlled centrally, and they can select how tight should be one of the bolt for the
torque,
for the tires, and they found like a vulnerabilities, and they could ransomware them, so they couldn't use it. But this shows also that they could tamper with the percentage of how tight or loose that should be the bolt. So that can create damage. People can eventually even die with when you mess with OT structures.
So for now, if we look back at it, we've been working in a partnership for already a year. I think we have a shared objective in this, creating awareness around OT. Why do you feel we need to create the awareness?
From a U.S. perspective, a few months back, the FBI director testified to Congress that if you took all of the industrialized countries, the allied countries, and put all of their cyber people together and compared them to the cyber component in China, it would be 50-1. So for every Luca, China would have 50 Lucas. And everything that we do in the modern day and age relies on that critical infrastructure. I mean, we just saw it. It actually was global when they had the software problem and it shut down all the airports, right? We had to hear Colonial Pipeline here went down, and just everybody on the entire East Coast panicked, and it was down for like a day and a half. So, if you take out all the electrical infrastructure for a week, you just destabilize the entire country, any country.
Yeah, and those countries, they're actually working on that, because we have discussed it in previous episodes of the Threat Talks as well, about the leaks from the Chinese, the Isun and the Vulcan, anti-Vulcan from the Russia, and they already have like infrastructure to train offensive teams on cyber war against OT infrastructure. They have the Crystal B2, for example, that it's a platform where they can launch these attacks and start to train. So it is real, and adversaries are training in that direction. So that's something that we need to be prepared.
And those environments are what we built here. And the things that you guys are doing, I think growing our partnership between Ontoit and TAC and expanding into the Netherlands and the US is going to allow us to have more collaborative events together. So we come up with the initial designs and things, and then as we refine them, you use your expertise to help us make them better, and then we'll just continue to make them better and create that environment where we can do events in the Netherlands, we can do events here, or we could do joint events virtually as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You indicated that OT was in the past it was less connected. Now everything is connected to IT. Can you explain a little bit further on the OT threats? You indicated a little bit, but can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, I can give the example of what we have been working now. So now, as TC mentioned, we were looking at the boards that they made and try to help inventorize and see what we need to change for what we use in Europe, because some things are different. For example, in Europe we have 220, 50 megahertz. Some things like electricity is a bit different, and we have some different components that we use as well. For example, we have been working on the well, I guess for you use it in a Hecht hospital, and it's the water treatment system.
Yep.
And of course, you have like now all these sensors, which are IoT devices that can detect the water flow or the temperature and the pressure of the water, for example, in what is used in a hospital. And we know that there's like this Legionella as a bacteria. Is it called bacteria?
Legionella bacteria.
Yeah, a bacteria. So the water needs to be at a certain temperature to avoid that. And one of the scenario, which is something that it's quite real, it is to hack into the system. You can go through, for example, well, hospitals, they have engineers that they need to monitor this, and that is an entry point for an attacker. And from there, then interact with the PLC that regulates the pump, which injects, for example, the chlorine in the water, and then just inject a huge amount of chlorine in the water, which will be lethal for humans. And that is an actual real threat that can happen. Now we're talking about the hospital, but this can happen in any building, like a hotel. Hotels also, they have the same, because they also need to be careful for the Legionella.
Because these OT protocols, they don't have security problems.
No, that's, as we mentioned before, they were not really designed with security in mind. It was more about availability. You need them to be reliable and always be able to do what they're supposed to do at that moment. So you can't imagine, for example, in the Netherlands, we have like the dikes and we are under the water. Imagine that you lay the dikes because security is more important. Yeah, but then you're drowning underwater. Yeah. So, it's always like, you need a protocol that is fast, that it works well, and that does what it's supposed to do.
And that's one of the things that we did in our city. We have our lake structure that's there, and it's the same reason, because here, in the mid-Atlantic, there are lots of dams here as well. We have lots of rivers that go into the Chesapeake Bay and the other bays. And that's the whole concept, is you can hack into that, and then you can I always look at it as you could do a couple things, right? If you're in a super wet season, like we saw the hurricane that hit North Carolina, you can overwhelm the dams by not allowing them to open the gates. So then it goes past capacity. You run a risk of catastrophic failure to the dam. Or if I didn't want to do the catastrophic failure and I just wanted to mess with everybody, I could just immediately dump the floodgates to full open and cause a flash flood downstream. So all of that is just critical. And you talked about the chlorine additives in the water. That's not just a potential. It happened in Oldsmar, Florida, which is outside of Tampa. The reason I pay attention is my daughter lives there. That somebody stole credentials. It was during the time of COVID, and they were doing all remote access, and somebody had compromised their credentials, and the bad guy went in and he updated the amount of chlorine that was going into the entire city's water system. And just by pure dumb luck, the right person, the actual authorized user, logged on like 5 minutes after the guy did it and saw that the numbers were completely off, was able to fix it and correct it. So, these threats are real. And this is how the IT and OT work together. So you got to protect them both.
Yeah, of course. And we've seen it in the past with Stuxnet, for example. Before, the systems were air-gapped, but they still managed to insert the malicious payload into the turbine. So like now it's even easier because everything needs to be connected. There's less air-gap systems. So it happens. It can happen. Maybe it takes years to plan it but for a motivated actor, especially a state actor, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of motivation and a lot of time. So they will invest resources in that.
Oh, and they have all the people that they want, because they say you're going to go do this. Not, gee, would you like to become a cyber person? It's, no, you are going to go be a cyber person.
Yeah, exactly.
So that
you volunteer.
Right. Yeah. You're voluntold.
So, also then probably from history that OT and IT, they were separate responsibilities, right? How do you see that now evolving?
It's really scary in that, like case in point, there was a casino out in Vegas that got hacked through their fish tank control system, right? So they've got all these giant fish tanks, and that is part of the IT on their network, but it controlled different OT sensors that were doing that, and that's how they got in. And then the bad guys were able to move laterally and get to more important networks. So because of the way everything is evolving in our world today, with the internet and everything being more interconnected, you can't have the two be separate silos. They have to work together because they have to be integrated. And the days of having just standalone systems, I think, are going away in order to be more efficient and more effective and more cost effective. But you've got to play together. IT can't just say I'm IT and OT engineers go, I'm just the OT. I can't.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Also, what you just mentioned with the fish tank and like why, I mean, you need a proper network segmentation, because why could you laterally move into something that is more sensitive of the network? That shouldn't happen.
Yeah, and that ties into the zero trust concept, which is something that we've been working here. One of our programs upstairs is developing a multi-user prototype with different levels of security access, and that's all based on a zero trust prototype to allow, like, all three of us could have different security clearances, but we could all ride on the same network, and you would only get what you need, I would only get what I need, so on and so forth, instead of having three separate networks. So it's a big challenge, and it's something that's not going to go away.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the zero trust? Because that's also something we have in common, the zero trust philosophy.
Yeah. Well, as we just discussed, as TC mentioned as well. So first of all, you start from the design. Yep. The network should be designed in a way that only what should communicate with each other can communicate with each other, and especially only what should be used. Like a stupid example, but it happened. Why would you allow SMB connection outbound from every host open to internet, for example? So you should try to limit all the protocols that are not needed, or at least to segment them and use them only where they're needed. So just make sure that these hosts can communicate this protocol only with this specific host or this network segment, because they need it, but not everywhere. But also role-based access. So, for example, assigning the correct permission to users. Don't limit also the use of software that are not needed. There's a lot of attacks now are from living off the lands. So, for example, users shouldn't be able to run PowerShell scripts unless they are admin and they really need to do that on the host. So try to limit also the possibilities that an attacker with normal credential could leverage at that point. So it's basic hygiene, but a lot of companies still struggle with that.
I was just amazed that throughout the years that I've done stuff through my military and all, how many times you would go somewhere and the whole unit would have admin rights. And I'm like, no, that should be like 2-3 people. That's it. Not everybody should be able to do that. And that's something that we have really cracked down on here at the TAC as well, making sure that only the authorized users, and that ties into that whole multi-factor authentication of the equipment, the user, the role, and the data that they're trying to get access to. If they all don't sync up, no joy. And that's how you stop that lateral movement on the network.
Yep. Yeah. So, let's have an intermission, because we have a code, a treasure hunt. If you find this code and send a code to code@threat-talks.com, then you can get a t-shirt like Luca is having. And the code is 032507. So 032507, and send it to code@threat-talks.com, and then you get one of these, because we have it's a limited edition, and we have several designs. So
you can also pick the design. You can look at the design. We have them right. Yep. You can look at them. So
yeah, we have them all available.
This is the best. I really like it. For Halloween, was it?
It was nice. Yeah. So as we indicated earlier, we're partnering with TAC to have these events not only here for our American contacts, but also we're trying to see how we can move these events forward in the Netherlands. Can you, because you already talked about Hecht Hospital, can you elaborate on some scenarios for Hecht Airport?
Yeah, sure. There's our airport environment that we had talked about earlier that we built is based off of Honolulu Hickam Airfield. So we wanted a dual use airport, so a military and civilian airport, because civilian airports have some things that military airports don't have. One of the most vital ones that people don't normally think of, and it would be kind of like the fish tank things, is your baggage handlers. If I shut down your baggage handling system in your airport, I just shut down your airport. And the concept why we started doing that is we were having people in our U.S. Air Force saying, if I can't get access to your planes, then you can't shut me down. You can't shut down my air operations. And we were like, well, I'll just shut down your whole airport. How about that? So that's the one way you can just shut it off. If I take away, and the whole other thing too is like military capabilities. If I were to take out the runway lights in military planes, the majority of them have the capability with NVGs, and they land on mountaintops all the time anyway. So it wouldn't bother. But in the civilian world, they're not equipped with NVGs and things like that. So imagine I'm flying to Hawaii, and then now all the lights on the runway are out, and I've got 20 airplanes inbound. What do I do with them? So those are some of the scenarios that we're utilizing there. Again, we have security access control. The fuel system is there that you can hack into. And there's different things too, just much like we talked about the dam. Do I want to be malicious or just degrade? Right? So I can shut the fuel system down and everybody will know the fuel is not working, or I can degrade it. So it fuels at, say, 70% of the full capacity. Because all the air cargo, when they plan it, they know how much fuel they take. They know how long it takes to fuel that. And they plan all their air operations based on that. Well, if I start dragging it out, making it take 20 minutes longer to fuel each airplane, well, now things are just going to get backlogged back and it'll slow everything down. So it can have a huge impact on your military operations when you're doing a large scale operation.
I've seen also the really cool with the weight. That's really interesting.
That's the other thing that came from one of my best friends who's a special ops aviator. And he said you would be surprised at how many air crews went down because of improper weight on the cargo planes. Some of it was just there's more gear than they thought, or the vehicles were supposed to be empty and they were all filled with fuel. You can tell it. But if you can take a scale and make it say that 10,000 pound pallet only weighs 5,000 pounds, the loadmaster looks at it, says, yep, okay, boom, 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 loads them all up. And if I overload one side of the airplane, I can wipe the airplane out before I ever get off the ground, because you've got twice as much weight on one side as it does the other. So hacking the scale was something that came from some real world experiences that some folks had. So there's that word again, real world stuff. So
real world, and by that making it all very tangible. So the hacking, it's not only the computer work, but you see really all the environments, like also in the port and the hospital and the Hack the Boat that we did, making it and raising awareness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing that I think will come from our partnership is, it'd be mutually beneficial for us. Is, I've been serving my country since 87, and everybody here at the TAC has one way or the other. We've got a lot of retired military guys. We've got a lot of retired civil servants. We've got a lot of guys that have spent all their time in the defense industrial base. That's what we want to do. We just want to serve our country. And for TAC, for us, it's not about the mission or not about the profits. It's about the mission. And that's one of the joys of being a nonprofit. I just need to cover my costs.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's just it. I'm not looking at 1,000 shareholders who want their stocks to go up and things like that. So we can be more cost effective, and help get this awareness out there that, guys, we need to step up our game.
Yeah, that's also great because this is a huge playground for people. So you're also happy. You cover the cost. People are happy to work here because it's a big playground, and you help the country because, of course, you make country safer.
Speaking about the playground, this Saturday we have Cyber Saturday, which we've got 138 kids in 5th through 10th grade registered to come here to spend about 6 hours here, going through 4 different cyber scenarios where we teach them different things. Some is about, there's a escape room that has puzzles. There's some cryptographic wheels where we teach them the basics of cryptography.
That's cool.
There's a session on phishing, cause the majority of your pen testing, I have friends that do it and they're like 85% of the time we get in, it's through people. I phish them. I spearfish them specifically and I entice them. So it's that social engineering. And we also teach the parents about that stuff too. So the parents can see what's going on out there and help the kids be more safe and hopefully get them excited so we can lower that 50-to-1 ratio.
Yeah. So this year in the Netherlands, Antuit is having a couple of Hecht the Boat events as well.
Yes.
Not small kids, but a little bit bigger kids. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. We just worked together with you on the Hecht the Boat that you had here, and we changed a little bit the design slightly, but also the way we organized the capture the flag, and we made it also accessible for people that have little to no experience, and or to people that have a bit more experience. And that's what we are working on. It's really fun. You have some rules, but in the end, basically the goal is to let the boat capsize and put the cargo in the water. And I'm not gonna give out too many things, too many information, because otherwise it's a spoiler.
Yeah,
but you can enter in the network with a couple of. You have a couple of ways to get in the network. Then you can lateral move, use some exploit, and then enter and just get access to the host that can communicate with the PLC that controls the ballast.
And that's the thing that we learned when we were doing our research for our first Hack the Port event, which was a major week-long event, is we found that the ships are most vulnerable when they're in port. And there's a maritime standard that they're supposed to have two separate networks, one to control the ship itself and then one for everything else. Through the research we've done, we found that people don't follow that. And they come into port, they connect into the network on the port, and then now they're connected. So now if I have a bad actor at the port when that cargo ship connects up, then he can make bad things happen.
It happens. I was reading, it was like still last year. Yeah, of course, now it's January, so everything was last year. But there was this, I think it was a US military ship that the crew installed like
Starlink.
The Starlink antenna without noticing anybody. That's, so things happen that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, and we had our own issue here in Baltimore with the cargo ship that took out an entire bridge, killed a whole bunch of people, shut down the port. I think it was 3.5 weeks before anything could come in or out. I never will say yes or no, but what was frustrating for me is, 3 hours, 6 hours after it happened, they're saying, oh, there's, no sign of malicious intent. I'm like, you haven't even stepped foot on the boat and looked at the network. We have a guy here that knows the PLCs that are used to control the power and the steering of those ships. And he's like, that's 75 lines of code to take that over. You got 23 guys on the ship. All it takes is one person being pressured.
Yeah.
There, pop a USB stick in, it's done, and then you're toast. So, is there? Again, not saying that that's what it is, not saying that's what they'll find, but I sure hope they are spending a lot of time looking at all of those networks to see what caused those power fluctuations and things like that.
For sure, advanced threat like APTs or nation states, they're good at anti-forensic. So the fact that you don't see, it does not mean that it didn't happen. It can be that they're really good. So this happened, and it is a thing. Not necessarily you're going to be able to find Trey.
Yeah, we've actually run 2 rapid prototype events here on Signature Diversity, just for that reason, to show the footprints. And again, that's the stuff that I've learned by being here, where they're like, we think this is a Russian actor or an Iranian actor or whatever, and it's based on the footprint that they leave behind. So it's fascinating to me. I don't know how to do it. It's really cool. It's fascinating to me.
It's really cool.
It is, and it's also what came apparent for us. What you indicated earlier, it's not only for one organization, it's the entire supply chain, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why also we're doing it, creating that awareness.
Absolutely.
With our Hecht the Boat, when we started it, we did it together with Damen Shipyards. And when Damen delivers a ship, then it's in the hand of the owner or the captain, and all systems that then get added to the ships. That
they're part of the supply chain. There's other,
absolutely. And anybody that's got the kind of funding that can buy a ship that Damen Shipyards builds has got to have a boatload, literally, of sensitive information on that ship. And it can be used for good or bad purposes. So, I'm very pleased to see that Damon is interested in actually participating, because there's a lot of companies that we were talking earlier this week, that they don't want to know. We were doing election security, and none of the election voting machine companies wanted us touching any of their.
Yeah, that's
nope, we got it. It's good. And we're like, are you sure? Yeah. So it's interesting. It's hard.
They're scared about reputational damage if something happens.
Absolutely.
So,
but that's why you sign ethical disclosure agreements.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just explain to them, look, if we find something, we're going to tell you, not anybody else.
Yeah.
So anyhow.
Yeah. Okay, gentlemen. Well, thank you for your insights. And let's see what the year is going to bring us with all the events. And for you and the listeners and the viewers, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you want to know more, go to threat-talks.com. There you can find the Threat Talks either on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple, and many other platforms. If you have any feedback, if you have any suggestions on additional topics to discuss, leave a comment. Every suggestion gets rewarded with a t-shirt. So that's even worth your while. I think they're really cool, right?
Well, yeah,
they are.
They are them. So.
You have all of them.
Hi.
Yeah. And if you're curious about an event, either with tech or with us, just reach out and we'll see how we can make that happen.
Yeah, and you can pay attention. Also, look at our website, which is thetac.tech. It's thetac.tech. And we have an events menu there that shows all of our upcoming events. We do lots of training. A lot of times that training can be virtual, so you don't have to be here. You can dial in from the Netherlands. And I think our next big event is going to be Defend/Hack the airport. Probably we're shooting for June timeframe, late May, early June. I'm trying to coordinate with some of the colleges.
We're going to put the information in the footnotes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chapter.
Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by Onto It Cybersecurity and M6. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.